Ready, Jonas?
We are ready. I think we will get the final checks from the control room, but I think we're all set. And yeah, big welcome everyone. Super happy to be here, and I'm also happy to see that there's a lot of people who have signed up today. And we're going to talk about Google Ads. We're going to talk about Google Analytics 4. We're going to talk about Google Tag Manager server side. We also mentioned a lot about new consumer trends and behaviors. So Morten, what are you most excited about to share today?
I'm very excited to share more insights into Performance Max, which is honestly the best campaign type that I have seen in the last 12 years with Google, but also a little bit more insight into online marketing itself. And yeah, I'm also very happy to hear you talk more about Google Analytics 4.
Nice, cool. Let's kick it off. So, but before we start, Morten, can you tell us a bit more about you?
Yes, so I'm the one smiling a lot here on the right. I'm not sure who took that picture, but yeah, I'm one of the co-founders of Keywordio. I'm an ex-Googler myself. I started in Google, I think it was 12 years ago, and yeah, back then there was no TikTok, there was no basically other competitors, but now there's a lot of them. But yeah, I'm still very much happy to talk about Google Ads because that's where I started from, and yeah, been working with the e-commerce ever since.
Yeah. And I am the smiling guy to the left, and I'm super happy that I joined the journey and to build Keywordio together with you for now. It's more than 5 years ago, and we'll also share some reasons why I'm so proud on the journey that we have been on and where we are today. So yeah, the agenda for today, like we said, new consumer trends for 2023. We have actually seen some really big shifts in how consumers make the purchase, and it's due to a lot of things, and it's also different in different categories, for example, within e-commerce. Then we'll speak about Google Analytics 4, Google Tag Manager server side, and yeah, Morten, you will bring in all the new updates and insights that you need to know about Performance Max, some do's and don'ts.
And some do's and don'ts, exactly.
So with that, and then we'll wrap up with the Google Analytics 4 checklist for all of you. We expect all of you to actually already have done a first version of the setup, but we meet many clients that hasn't really made it perfect setup and don't have verified it. So we're going to see about that later.
Mm-hmm. And so, I think at the end, Jonas, don't you have a deal for everyone that you will share at the very end of the webinar?
Great, thanks for reminding. We actually have a really good deal, and it's for I know that we have a lot of marketeers on the call, and it's going to be a great offers to yeah, hang on to the end for sure. So what we do at Keywordio, I mean, like you said, Morten, I mean, back when you started from the beginning, it was only one bubble here. Today, we deliver services within paid search, paid social. We optimize content for, I mean, if you run paid ads on TikTok, you really need to be on top of your game to adopt your content for TikTok. You need to make sure it's creative and fills it up. Then you need to apply the same logic if you do stories and reels on Instagram as well, right? So it is very important with creatives. Market automation, how do you make your customers come back again? And of course, data, what we will speak about later today. How you collect it, store it, and how you actually distribute it through the different marketing channels. But anything you would like to comment on this slide, Morten?
No, just you know, this is of course about Keywordio, but I would imagine that anybody following this from other companies probably have more or less the same story, not necessarily doing perhaps as much within creatives, but I've met a lot of companies who just started with Google Ads, and that worked because that was the best sales channel, right? But now we see that you need to have at least 4 or 5 different sales channels, because otherwise, I'm just sorry, you will not survive the next 5 years if you're just running Google Ads, for example. So I love it, yes, and I love doing it. But yeah, we have evolved as a company, and I imagine it's the same for a lot of people on this call.
Yeah, and like you said, it's just a mirror of our customers. This is what our customers need. And what type of customers do we work with? Work on everything from like e-commerce startup to global brands, within business to business. Could be direct to consumers, it could be multi-brand, it could be selling something like a fintech solution, it could be something that is valuable on site, really, I would say, that you need to sign up for. That is really where we see you can work with all of these different parts, and this is the type of customers that we work with globally and specifically locally in the Nordics. And I am really proud of this slide, and to actually collect all of these recognitions from our partners, like being labeled the top 2 in Sweden from Google, and being, I mean, 1 out of 2 invites to the awards in Dublin, top rated by TikTok. We're getting the highest partner tier for Meta, and we're rated as the leading partner for Pinterest in the Nordics. And I mean, all this combined makes me very proud to get these kind of recognitions.
Yes. And also really shows what we can do for our clients, right? Because that's really why this matters, right? So we can do workshops with, for example, TikTok, if we wanted to, that there's a Drift Avenue have, like, how do we succeed in the US, right? Then we can bring in the relevant people from TikTok. So it's really a game changer for our clients, which is, yeah, why it makes us so proud that we are recognized like this. So it's very makes us very proud.
Yes. And like you said, you will speak a lot more about PMax, and PMax is some things you will actually not be able to do as yourself, as a brand. Sometimes you actually need an agency with the right collaboration to be able to get the right updates and insights into this. But you said, Morten, Google is the core, right? And why is Google the core for us from the beginning?
Well, it's because I was an ex-Googler, right? And TikTok wasn't created, right? So yeah. So we started with Google Ads, and of course that's developed. And I actually quite honestly don't know where we started with, but I would say it was probably in the thousands of kroners of SEK in the beginning, right? And we're now well above 500 million Swedish kroners in ad spend, right? So we have a lot of clients who are putting in a lot of money into Google, which of course, being an ex-Googler and having a little bit of stock in that company, that's quite well. But yeah, it also really shows that we have a lot of really big companies, and yeah, they put their trust in us, and we're very happy that they do, because we deliver great results for them.
And it changed a lot over the years, and I think the change pace feels like it's increasing. So what consumer trends is it that we see right now? But before we dig into that, so we will share some of the studies that we have seen, and we will also talk more about the data collection, because that is really the key here when it comes to collecting the right data, share it with the algorithms in a privacy safe way. That is so important that you really are on top of that, because what Morten will talk about, for example, AI, when it comes to, for example, PMax or use cases that we have in GPT-4, it is about feeding the algorithms with data, and the right type of data in a privacy safe way. That is really the key. So these things you need to be on top of today to actually win 2023 for sure.
Yes, because before you move on, Jonas, like, AI is of course artificial intelligence, and that can be very smart, right? But and you know more, Jonas, but the ChatGPT started out only feeding in, let's just say 5 different data points, and then it was 10, and then it was 10 million and so forth, right? But if you don't have that many data points, then you can have the smartest AI, but you won't get that far, right? And I don't know, this is maybe not for this slide, Jonas, but we had one slide where it just shows that if you don't have the right conversion tracking set up, you lose, for example, 30 or 40% of your data, right? And then it could be that you have the smartest AI, but you will just not win as a customer because you don't have enough data points to really make the correct optimization. Right? So that's why it's important.
Yeah, for sure. So this is a large study done by Google, and it's about consumer confidence and how it's actually plummeted below even levels that we saw 2020. And if you look at the orange dotted line for Sweden, it is really not going in the right direction. And why this is, of course, there's a lot of different reasons happening right now with global economy, inflation rising, and of course this affects the average person, and it will affect how they make the purchase, what they are looking for. So depending on what type of business you're in, it is very important to just be aware the game that you did for 1 or 2 years ago, it will not work. It's a complete different landscape, and you need to adapt to this landscape for sure. And what kind of new search behavior do we actually see? So with inflation rising, we see that people are looking for more promotional intent. Once again, Sweden stands out here. And that is, I think it's pretty interesting. So orange dotted line is Sweden. And we actually see that these kind of queries are actually rising 31% year over year in Sweden. And it's super high up on the list. So people are really looking for value and some kind of promotional intent. So I know that there's a lot of brands that say, hey, we don't do discounts and we don't do that. I'm not saying everyone should go and do discounts. I think it's really understanding there's a new consumer behavior and be smart how you position your marketing to be, review your brand playbook, think about what's the value we're offering and how can we be smart in this landscape.
Okay, so you're not recommending everybody to have Black Friday every month?
No, I definitely don't recommend everyone to run Black Year. That's not.
No, exactly.
But you definitely need to be aware of this behavior, and you need to adapt to it and be smart with it for sure. And this is another recommendation that this is a great study that was done by a lot of the psychological behavior analysis that they have at Google, and it's about decoding decision, and it's about understanding how people make decisions before they buy. So they done the study from when you get triggered to buy something, go into the exploration phase where you're trying to explore what to buy, then you maybe evaluate the different options, you go back into exploration, you typically explore a couple of other options that you realize that I'm looking into, back in evaluation, and then in the end you make the purchase. And this study also summarized 6 key areas that you need to be aware of and that you should think about when you craft your marketing message to optimize for highest likelihood to get the purchase and to get the sale in the end. So
of course, the exploration phase can look different for different clients, I would imagine, Jonas, right? Whether or not you buy a very cheap table tennis bat, let's call it that, or an expensive sofa, right? So it can be from short to long, that period, I would imagine.
Exactly, and it's applicable to a lot of different areas. But basically the key psychological behaviors that you need to be aware of and need to address, those are the same, but it will be different for, what's the message for you? So definitely recommend download it, read it, and apply it to your own brand playbook and how you communicate. Then another question, like we said, like people are looking for more value, looking for more promotional intent, but where am I with, for example, with my category, for example? So in this one, we have on the X scale, you have price-related queries growth. And on the Y scale, you have category growth, so how the category is growing. And then you have the different categories in the different bubble. And the dark blue area, this is the categories that are more sensitive to pricing, and the ones that are less sensitive to pricing. So for example, actually expensive jewelry is not that sensitive to pricing. Footwear and clothing is also not that expensive or not that sensitive to pricing. But when it comes to home furniture, toys and games, home decoration, consumer electronics, kitchen and dining, and hair care, I mean, those are more affected by pricing.
And the bottom right, is that butter?
Yeah, it's butter, and we used to talk about this, right? That there's a big difference between Sweden and Denmark, and I think there's a lot of Swedes trying to figure out the best price for Bregott, I think. So yeah. That's probably the whole bubble. And for all of you who live in Sweden, there's a lot of talk on the news now on the food prices for sure. So let's move on to the next chapter, Google Analytics 4 and Google Tag Manager server-side tagging. So Morten, you live in Denmark, and Datatilsynet, I don't know how you would pronounce that in Danish. You probably
You're close.
Yeah. But they made a post last year that I think is also really good, and I think you should read it, and it explains why they have certain concerns about Google Analytics, but they also have concerns about Google Analytics 4. So you cannot just believe that, hey, we already made the transition to Google Analytics 4, we are all safe now. So for example, here, Google Analytics 4 does not collect IP addresses. Isn't that enough? The main concern here is that data transfer of personal information to the US, I mean, the complaints coming in from Schrems 2, that is the concern. And if you see the text here and you should read the full post from them, they still have concerns with Google Analytics 4. And I think the main takeaway here is to actually see that it's not what system you're using. It's not how, it's really about controlling the data and know how to collect it and be well aware of what it is, so you can set it up in the right way, because you can set up any system in the wrong way, but you can also set up Google Analytics 4 in the correct way when it comes to privacy, if you know exactly what you're doing. But then you really need to understand the technology, how is tracking done, and how to do it. So that is the main takeaway here, to really be on top of your data collection, make sure that you have the correct way of getting privacy consent and working with that, and then transferring the data to your marketing algorithm so they get the best possible opportunity to do their work that they need to do the best for your business. So I think we're going to see a lot more of this. So I was in the US last year, and I saw already then that Apple is pushing Apple privacy first message. I also saw big ads from WhatsApp coming about WhatsApp message that is secure and traceable. So when we see this big tech company push privacy first message to end customers will start to expect this from everyone else, I believe. And I think this will drive both regulatory changes, it will drive more user demand, and also technology change that we already see from example Apple a lot. And this is just from 1 month ago in Sweden, where Apple starts to push this message to sell iPhones. Integrity, privacy, that's Apple. So they are starting to push this message in the Nordics now. They didn't do this last year, but now they are ready to push it here as well. So it's not just about Schrems 2 acts. We have different types of regulatory developments all over the world, pretty much. So it is a global thing, and you need to be aware of it, depending on what markets you're active in and how you run your business right now. And one example of the tracking prevention that you see, for example, from the iOS 15.6 is here in Safari. You see more of the hide IP addresses, limit IP address tracking, and of course, are these things that are default set to this or not? I mean, that's also things that we will see. You see the, for example, hidden email addresses, and they release new innovations when it comes to privacy all the time. So there's a fast changing pace when it comes to technology in this area for sure. So it's not the privacy talk, but you need more information about that. Read our blog post. It is written about privacy, GDPR, and Schrems 2, specifically for marketeers. And it links to all the sources from, example, EU. It's a list of all the 101 complaints sent in, but none of your business. That is really the foundation for the Schrems 2 cases. And you also have some good podcast tips on that. So there's a lot of good content. Scan it, read it, get more of the basic information and background story why privacy is so important right now.
And especially it is important if you just set up a Google Analytics 4 profile and you're like, now I'm safe, right? That is probably not the case, right? So reach out if you have any questions for this, because you do not want to have a lawsuit on your company. That is not fun.
No, exactly. So what is the most important when it comes to Google Analytics 4 to set up? It's really to get the basics right. And like you said, Morten, I mean, what I think you should do when you should move over, like I said, many of you have already started using it, so you're already there, but you should do a privacy assessment first. If you haven't done that, there is also something. Reach out. We do this continuously, and we have a framework for it. Then, number 2, you should establish the source of truth. So you have one KPI that you can measure and verify continuously. Because I also meet a lot of companies that say, hey, our data layer is a mess. We don't trust it. I'm not sure about the data. And you don't want an organization where you cannot trust the data, because then you don't dare to take the important decisions.
Exactly.
Then verify it and make sure it's verified automatically. So we typically build solutions customized for this. We typically use Funnel to collect all the data in one place, and then we do verifications of the data, so we continuously can clean and make sure it's set up. Then we can come to the fun stuff and talk about the new features in Google Analytics 4. But if you're not there, then I mean, you need to make sure you do 1, 2, 3 before you go all in on number 4.
And Jonas, let's if you can just go to the last slide, and of course this is just maybe my opinion, but maybe not everybody on this call are like, you know what, I think it's the most fun to do a Google Analytics 4 setup, and that could be it. But one of the reasons we think it makes sense, right, is because if you don't know if you have 5% of your revenue coming from Facebook, if you have 10% coming from Instagram, if you have 8% coming from TikTok or whatnot, it could also be double that or triple that, right? So if you don't know data that is coming into your business, in our opinion, how can you even run a successful business, right? And of course, if there's no competitors in your market space, most likely you can, right? But I don't think anybody's in that situation, right? So it is very important that the tracking information that you get into Google Analytics 4 is correctly set up, because then you can create better business opportunities for the future. Yeah,
and I think that's a really good point. And when it comes to attribution, we're going to talk about it a bit later when we get into Google Analytics 4. But I think also good to mention here that video is getting more important, and telling stories with video continuously, and working with, if somebody have seen 75% of video, then they see another video. And when it comes to that on TikTok, on Meta, that will not even drive a click, right? But it is still probably very valuable for your business if it's done right. So that you will not even see. So you need to have a way to actually think about these non-click parts of your marketing funnel as well. So Google Tag Manager server side. And anything of this sounds familiar? I need to improve tracking quality. I have problems. My current data layer is a mess. I don't trust my analyticals number. I need to fix tracking for Google Ads. I want to send specific data set to TikTok, and I want to know exactly what I'm sending. There's a lot of these questions out there, and some of them it's important to solve here. So what is the difference between client side and server side? So client side, you have all the tags directly on the web, and they are sent directly to, for example, analytics. They are sent directly to Facebook or TikTok, for example. Doing it server side, then you have one container on the website. This is also helping you to actually increase the page speed as well, which is also important for your business. But then it sends that information to a secured server that you manage. Could be Google Cloud, or it could be any other cloud provider. Then on that, maybe you will do manipulation of the data. Maybe you will enrich the data. Maybe you'll remove some data, for example, completely. And then you will send data specifically to each one afterwards. So sending the data to analytics, to TikTok, to Meta, for example. So that is the important. So here are just a couple of different use cases for it. So use case one, you set it up, and the main purpose here is to make sure you do it in a privacy safe way. So you send it, and then you anonymize the IP, and you work with, for example, consent mode or enhanced conversion, and then you send the information to Google Ads or GA4. So then you know that none of the data that is actually questionable, for example, according to the Danish Data Protection Authority, is never sent. Then you are safe. Then you know this is okay, because we are not even sending any of that data at all. It's not used at all, for example. So that is one use case. Another use case is that you maybe need to enrich some of the data. So maybe you have a database, maybe you need to calculate some profit margins, or maybe you have a very complex customer journey. It could be that you're selling in the B2B space, or you're selling in fintech, and you maybe it takes from a first conversion, you're not really sure. It can take days, sometimes it's even weeks. Maybe you need to sort of run those calculations and wait for some things to happen before you do it. And then combining that with, for example, CRM data, and then sending it continuously to your different ad platforms. And this is what we talked about in the beginning, right? Making sure that you feed the algorithms in each channel with the best possible data that they can have, because they're going to do a better job. They need data to do their job over here. So this is very important. And this is why you should look into this to make sure you are on top of it. And server side versus client side, I mean, honestly, data ownership, it is very difficult with client side tagging, because then you have everything directly on the client side. It's sent directly to the platforms. It is just easier also to control everything. When you take it into your server, you have control, and you can actually make the clear decision there. Do I want to send this? Yes or no? There's no sort of, oh, this slipped through, for example. Everything is clearly owned by you. And we have some examples here that we have seen. So this is, for example, from Meta, that let's look at the total events here. It's here in this case, we have 39,000, and we only receive 13 directed from browser, but we have 26,000 from server. So this is just a good example of how big difference it could be if you are working with these kind of setups. And of course, conversion API for Meta and events API is really the key for now. And some of our specialists even say, if you don't have this set up correct way, you can even stop advertising in some cases, because you're not feeding the algorithms good enough. And
so basically, Jonas, just so I understand it, and then maybe I'm asking on behalf of our people here on the call, but so you're saying if you have client-side tagging, in the first one, you could actually only get 13,000 events, right? Whereas if you did server-side tagging, you would have 39,000. Is that correct?
Exactly. I mean, the actions will still be there, but you will not tracking them, and you will not feed them to the algorithms that can optimize for what you would like to optimize for. So that's that's good. And the question you can ask yourself, I mean, can our marketing algorithms that we use, can they lose 2 out of 3 important events in some cases, for example? And can they still do a good job? A good job? I would say probably they will not be able to do it. So this is really important. And you can set whatever targets and you can do the best optimizations, but if you don't have the right data in, then they're gonna have a really tough day on the job for sure to do the best for your business. So some upcoming features, gonna be more consent-based logic coming in Q2 for GTM. Also Google Signals will come, and that's also something you should be aware of, and then you should also understand the privacy aspect of potentially using it. And then we're also going to see more for mobile app as well, and using server side for mobile as well. So there will be some big releases upcoming for GTM server side tagging soon as well. So let's move over to Google Analytics 4 and also think about it from a privacy-centric setup of your measurement stack. And like you said, Morten, attribution is very important. And one of the big things in Google Analytics 4, and you can look at some of our older webinars that talk more of the details about this. But of course, it's a new data model and it's a new attribution model, and you can even shift attribution model as well. So here, if you go into attribution settings in your user menu, you can change it, and you can change the attribution. Default is actually cross-channel data-driven setup, and you can work with different conversion events and the conversion windows and the look-back windows as well. What many people don't know at all is that Google Analytics 4, it has different scopes. So for example, you can look at users, you can look at sessions, and you can look at events. And actually it uses different attribution models for different parts here. So if you look at, for example, users, you can actually not change the attribution model here. It will use cross-channel last click. End of discussion. Session, the same. Events, that is the one that you are affecting. So if you look at the versions here, coming in unpaid, you have a session, you maybe do a session start, which is an event, view item, you sign up, those different events, and the user is Sam. Sam could come back. You will have different attribution models at play here. So this is very important to be aware of when you're looking into the interface. And I mean, you can definitely do just a PhD on attribution modeling itself, but this is important to be aware of, and something that many people are not aware of at all. So if you look into the user acquisition report, for example, you see the scope, which is the prefix here. It says first user. So here, it's actually Google is trying to explain to you that this is user acquisition, first user. Then you sort of know that, okay, it's user and it's the scope. Then you know, okay, this is probably not a data-driven attribution model in here. And also mentioning what I said earlier, that you will have probably a lot of the touch points, depending on what type of ads you run, that maybe the purpose is not even to get people to click on an ad, for example. With video views, if you run those as branding, maybe you want the user to see 3 different videos and to tell a story that will get them to be more, that's interesting, and then find you some other way, for example. So understanding this is it's also very important to be aware of. And then when it comes to Google Analytics 4, to really start to be comfortable with the exploration hub, because here you can build your customized analysis a lot better. So you can, let's say that you have dimensions in the A segment. You can add the different dimensions that you want to look in. B, you add the columns, and C, you can see the insights. So let's say that you maybe think about, okay, what happened with my traffic coming from Safari compared to Safari in app compared to Chrome. Safari in app, by the way, that is typically if you have an app, let's say you run a lot of ads on Meta, for example, and people click through, or they just get the preview in Safari in app. This is really clear when you, for example, open up a website from the LinkedIn app. You see its default, it's typically Safari that is open. Then it could be interesting for you to evaluate what traffic sources are people coming in from, and do I see some of the browsers that have completely different pattern? Because then you might be that you have not all the data from that browser, for example. So working with the different dimensions and playing around with it, it's a good exercise to start being comfortable to get some of the more deeper analysis in this. And here I'm just looking at active users, but of course you can do the same and then just add transactions, for example. And in this case, say up here, we see that we have a lot of CPC conversions coming for Safari, but we see as much for Safari in app, for example. So this is probably something that could be worth looking into. And of course, comparing how other browsers are performing as well, comparing to this. And using some of the suggested segments and I mean, likely to churn, likely to make a purchase. You have a lot of predicted audience that you can work with. And of course, they are based on a lot of signals that Google is getting, but you need to use them in a smart way. So Morten, with that, let's deep dive into PMax.
Yes, we're looking forward to it. So if you stop sharing your screen, I will take over the sharing. Yes. And we'll get into it. So obviously, Jonas has just talked a lot about Google Analytics, and those that is very important because that is how you track your traffic, of course. Now we're digging deeper into Google Ads, which I suppose the parent company is the same as Google Analytics, but that is paid advertising, of course. And when you pay to get in clicks, of course, you want to understand, am I doing this the best way I can, right? So the setup is to understand it, but if you don't do Google Ads very well, then most likely you will not get any money. And that is, of course, what most companies care about. So with further ado, let me introduce you to PMax or Performance Max. But before doing that, actually, I would just like to say that, of course, Google is only one of the channels, right? And why am I saying that? I do think that Google and Performance Max is probably one of your more important campaigns. Some will be 50%, others will be 80% of the budget you will spend towards the converting channels. But we have seen so much success for our clients when adding on other channels, and of course this is a Google Ads and Google Analytics webinar, but we feel it would not be fair to say to you that if you're only doing, for example, Google Ads and maybe only have Meta on top of it, you need to add more sales channels, because otherwise in the near future you will be most likely behind the game. Okay, so most of our clients have 5 or 6 different sales channels, so yeah, make sure you also have that.
Yeah, and I think with that slide as well, it's an example, but I mean, when it comes to B2B companies, then typically TikTok is switched to LinkedIn, because LinkedIn is super targeted when it comes to that. And you have another media mix, but it is so important to review the whole media mix, and specifically in challenging years like this for many, it is key to do it.
Yes. But let's talk about the Performance Max. So as already discussed on this webinar, I started in Google 12 years ago, and at that point there was no Performance Max. There wasn't even Target OS or a lot of these things, right? There's basically just Google search. There was a small ad at the top, and then all the rest was organic. Maybe Google Maps had been created, Gmail definitely had created, but I don't think ads was there and so forth. And I'm not sure if we bought YouTube at that point. But anyways, back then you had Google search, and that was all the money that Google made, and that was probably all the money that made your company any money. But we have since developed. So now you have display advertising, you have YouTube advertising, you even have apps within Gmail and also within Google Maps, right? So Google have created what's called the all-in-one campaign, the Performance Max. I secretly call it the Sauron campaign, so the one campaign to rule them all, if you know Lord of the Rings. But in any case, this is the most powerful campaign that I have seen in the last 12 years. It is fueled by AI, so artificial intelligence. But this campaign type is, according to, again, what I have seen, the best campaign type in terms of having the best artificial intelligence. They are putting out so many inputs into this campaign type, and they know exactly when to serve, for example, a YouTube campaign, or when to show a remarketing campaign on display to get you to get that purchase, right? So this campaign type is really, really important, and let's dig deeper into what it is. So Performance Max takes a lot of input. Let's call them now audience signals, right? So these audience signals, the artificial intelligence, let's say, computes all these different data points, and then they try to find you those exact users, whether or not they are on YouTube or they're on Google Maps and so forth, when they're on it, on the browser that you want, right? On the day that you want it, and if it's raining or whatnot, right? So it is a little bit black box, but as I can tell you, the performance works, right? So some of the ones that we typically use are, for example, non-converters, right? So you could say, these are non-converters. These are the ones who came into our cart and then abandoned them, right? And then Google will be like, all right, let's see if we can get them on a remarketing campaign to just say, hey guys, we understand that you have bought, but here's an ad, please buy, right? That's essentially what's happening. Also, you could have, for example, converters. It could be a group of, for example, women who've bought within the last 3 days, and they all have a MacBook and so forth, right? So basically, it's just signals. It could be men, it could be women, it could be young, it could be old, it could be both, it could be anything, right? But these are the signals that the AI uses to optimize, okay? And that is what is basically the success of this campaign. Again, as I said, demographic and interest-based targeting. It could be they have shown an interest on Google search for could be dogs, or on YouTube for cats and so forth, yeah. And then, of course, you can also have keywords and custom segments, and it could also be a competitor website, for example. So yeah, basically, it's a lot of audience signals that enhances your campaign type, and that is what is super cool about this campaign type. And yeah, so that is it. So it's one campaign. It's targeting all these different segments. And then you could say, okay, so does that mean I just need one campaign and then Google handles the rest? That is not what we're saying. We would definitely say the exact opposite. And why is that? Well, here we have two different segments. So for example, let's say you have an asset group. It could be brand one or whatever that has a very high ROAS, okay? Well, great. And you have another one that has another ROAS. Let's say this is 7, this is 5, and this is 3. Right? If you know nothing else, then of course the one that has 7 ROAS within one campaign, well, that would be better than 5 and definitely better than 3, right? But what we're saying is that you should align it towards your business goals. Again, business goals can be different. One of the things we see more often than not is, for example, profits. Let's not talk more about what we call POAS, or profit optimizing, but let's say you have one campaign type that has a very high margin and you have another one that has a very low margin, right? If you only have one campaign, then you don't know how much of it is am I pushing out the ones that has a high margin, how much is it that I'm pushing out the ones that have with a low margin, right? So basically, you would like to have this one maybe always on. Maybe you don't want it to be limited by budget because you're making money every time you get one more click. If that's the case, then you don't want to talk about, oh, I actually only want 10 clicks. You want as many clicks as you can if you're profitable, right? And again, if you have very low margins, I have seen companies who have turned off, let's say 20% of their product inventory because their margins were too low. That does not mean you need to take it off your website. People can still buy it on your website, but paying to get in that traffic could be very, very expensive, okay? So yeah, that is adding on top of Performance Max. don't leave money on the table. What does that mean? Well, outside of of course, the obvious, basically, if you have one campaign, this is a live example where you have a budget of 7,000 kroners, and you could be spending 10,000 or almost 12,000 per day, then of course Google says, well, how many more weekly interactions or cost per interactions could you get, and what would the weekly cost be? But and again, I'm not running Google, but if I were, I would maybe say, well, of course you need to show the cost, but you also need to show the upside, which could be revenue or even better, your profit, right? So if you have a high margin campaign, you do not want to be limited by budget if all the extra budget you could get is profitable, right? But if this was the low margin campaign, you could say 7,000 could even be the correct number, or it could even be 3,000 kronor, right? So make sure that you have split this into the correct, let's say, campaign buckets, and then the ones that you want to run unlimited should not be limited by budget. So how else could we help Performance Max? So this is a chart that we have of where we have benchmark product price here on the left side, on the y-axis, and on the x-axis we have the ROAS, right? So the higher the ROAS, of course, you want your price to be as competitive as possible, because with Google Shopping, you of course have different prices for, could be exactly the same product. It could also be the same product, but let's say different data storages like this one. And of course, if you have all your up here, for example, let's say A, where you have a very high ROAS, but you're also priced very high, is that what you want to do, right? So if you have a very high ROAS, it could be because you're priced correctly. If you have a very low ROAS, it could also be that you're not priced correctly, right? So if this had been exactly the same product, I would say, again, it's the same company, so it would not be. But if this is company A and this is company B, of course, company A would get most of the sales, right? And again, it goes without saying that it's not always just about having the lowest price, because, you know, if you have the lowest price, it could be that you're losing money, and that is something that you would not necessarily want to do. But you need to have a very competitive price compared to your competitors, because yeah, if you don't have it, you probably won't sell that much. So with that, we move into the do's and don'ts of PMax. And this is something that you will see in your slideshow, so you don't have to take note of this because we will send it out, but I will go through them. So you need to enable the dynamic URL expansions, and that's because you basically need for the Google AI to send the traffic to the most relevant URLs on your website. And also you need to enable only the presence, so not the presence of interest, on your advanced location options. So as I said, these are the best practices. So make sure you do those after this call, whenever we send you around the slides. And of course, provide as many assets as possible, but it should be, you know, assets that are great, right? So again, if you add 5 logos, well, maybe you only have 3 logos that are the best. Well, then you add 3 best looking logos in a high resolution quality, right? So as many assets as possible, and that is also, of course, text and then of course images. Yeah. So yeah. And then you can also check the PMax insights. So sometimes there are some really great insights that could help you make more money. Some of them are not the best. You need to use the ones that apply for your business, okay? And also, we recommend using app category exclusion. So for example, if you don't want to be shown on gaming apps, then you can add that as an exclusion, or whatever apps it is that you want to exclude. Also, you can add your own brand as a negative in PMax. We actually recommend having a separate search campaign that targets your own brand, so that's not limited by budget. Most PMax can be limited by budget, but your own brand, we do not want to be limited. And also, we say to actually do not turn off your search campaigns, just run them in conjunction with your Performance Max campaigns. And how many you need is of course depends on your business goals. Also, the learning period and the budget. Obviously, it would be nice to not be limited by budget, because the more budget you spend means the more learnings you've done. as I'm not going to be paying for any of it, then of course it depends on your, let's say, own budget. But we do recommend at least 4 weeks to make sure that Performance Max has honed in on the correct level, right? So after week 4 will be much better than week 1, because week 1 will be all over the place, and then of course after some weeks it'll get much better. And then you do need to add as many extensions and assets as you can. So that could be a site link, it could be an image and a logo and all these things, right? So make sure you have all the site links, all the extensions, and then that is definitely something that you need to do. And of course, we already said the video assets, it needs to be in a high quality, right? If it's a very poor quality, I'll show it a bit later. There's nothing that is worse for your brand than showing ads in a very poor image quality, right? It really does not create a great brand recognition. So here are some of the don'ts. Everybody, of course, is very keen on talking about AI, right? But if you don't have conversion tracking set up correctly, it doesn't even make sense to talk about AI. It actually doesn't even make sense to use software even without AI, right? So make sure your conversion tracking is working 100% before you start Performance Max. Well, basically anything. And also, you shouldn't duplicate your Merchant Center feed images into the asset groups within Performance Max. They are not the best. So you need to create high quality images and use those. And also, don't run your Performance Max campaign without audience signals, right? And the reason why is because Performance Max uses those audience signals to find more of the correct audiences. And if you don't, then basically it means slower learning, and slower learning basically means that you lose money, right? So you don't want to do that. And also you should run your current search campaigns, because it's not great to rely only on Performance Max campaign. So we always say to always use search campaigns as well. And we talked about ruining your brand. That is, of course, a don't as well. But some may have seen some very ugly images on different, let's say, it could be on Aftenbladet.se, or this is I think Expressen. But of course, this leads to a very bad user experience, and your brand is maybe not portrayed in the right way. So that is one of the negative sides with Performance Max. But we can actually take off display from Performance Max, right? And I think I already said that one of the key things about Performance Max is that you have display, Google Ads, search, maps, YouTube, all these things in one. And yes, that is definitely the best. But if you have some bad performance on certain websites, or you don't want your ads to be shown on display, then we can actually do that for you. So yeah, get in touch with us if you want to run, for example, a shopping only campaign, or if you want to run a search only campaign within Performance Max. So yeah, that is something that can be done. Jonas, let's talk a little bit about OpenAI. I think that would be a great transition here.
Yeah, and I don't think anyone on this call has missed the hype about ChatGPT. But I mean, bringing the talk back to AI, and I mean, 20 years ago when I did my master thesis at KTH, I was using neural networks to optimize a Scania V8 engine, and way before me, many of these algorithms have still been invented way before that. So it is not new, and there is something that has been ongoing, but it's a big hype right now. And like you said, Morten, I mean, you have been working with many of the different innovations within AI from Google coming out for many of the last years. Some of them you have been very skeptic about and seeing like this is actually not working, and then testing at small scale. And when we see it picks up, and then you need to be fast on doing it. And of course, you've been working really close with the product team to build products on top of APIs for these big platforms for a long time. But we believe that if we look at GPT-4, which is the latest release from OpenAI, and this is a new version, what is interesting here is that this will be able to take more kind of input. So it's not only text, it will be able to take in and understand picture. It will be able to take in speech, for example. So in this picture in the middle here, if we would ask it here, like what would happen if we cut the strings, then GPT-4 understands that, well, the balloons will fly away. And imagine that you have a lot of assets, you have tested a lot on Meta or TikTok, and actually run GPT-4 on the best performing creatives to really try to understand why this is working and to get more context about why things are working. Those are really interesting use cases to use it. And of course, it can also take a lot more text in. So it can take 8 times more text than ChatGPT in, which will be very important for more complex tasks and to generate. So I think I'm really excited about what we can do with it, and what we can do with using the API to it, so we can use it at scale. Those are some of the cases I'm really excited. What do you say, Morten? What are you most excited about?
I think I'm very excited about showing the next slide, because that's what we think.
Let's go to the next slide.
A user.
Yeah.
So we are trying to use this for optimizing for our clients, and here we go. This one. So here on the left-hand side, Jonas, that is from one of our clients where that was the current title, or not the current, but the previous title, right?
Yeah.
Which of course doesn't have a brand in it, and all these things. And then as far as I understand, right, we fed into ChatGPT. So this is what we would like for you to do, and then it came out with this description and this title, which is much better, right?
Exactly. And I think a lot of the buzz when it comes to ChatGPT is a lot about context, and you're playing around with it like sort of manually. But I really think those kind of use cases where you can actually use the API to do more and working with feed, I mean, that when it gets really interesting, I think, because still working through this manually, it still be impossible for many companies, because you have too much content and you have too much data. So the API access that we have and that we're working on, that is the exciting part about this as well.
Yes, and of course you could do it if you have, let's say, 30,000 products. Maybe you do a one-size-fit-all, and then you take your top 20 products and you do those, look them over manually, right? And then of course you want to do it for everything, but you start from the top and you work your way down.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think you also talked about how to actually use it for optimizing your website as well, right? Because that is, of course, also super important. Yeah.
And if you remember the picture that you showed about products, where you showed, for example, product that had a low price, but the ROAS were really bad, for example. It might be that there's something else that is wrong on those products. It could be that the product information or the UX is not good on those products, or it could be that you don't have enough trust from the customers to actually sell the product. But if you have problems with that, then also working with product information at scale with these kind of algorithms is, of course, really interesting as well, to generate more product information, for example, to make it easier to explain what you're selling. So this is also a use case that I think is really exciting as well. So yeah, we have some final things, but like we said all through, like if you have any questions or comments, feel free to send an email to us and ask a question.
Yes, and I want that offer, Jonas. Are you ready for it?
Let's go. So
let's start with the offer, and then we can take the other one after.
Let's start with the offer. Yeah. So Komplett Företag, one of our clients, they have right now, starting today, they have a 50 hours sale, and I can promise you, for everyone within marketing that loves to work on a Apple computer or MacBook, you don't see offers on those pretty often. So right now they have an offer. So I really recommend you to go in and see what you can find, and it's going to be a 50 hours offer. So yeah, go in there and find what you need, because you're not getting any better chance for the coming time to improve your tech setup, for sure.
Yeah. And if somebody's downloaded the webinar, then I hope that they watched it before 50 hours from now.
Exactly. And then, like we promised, here is a checklist for your migration of the Google Analytics 4. And reach out, send us an email if you need help. And for example, I'm not sure how we do the privacy assessment, or I'm not sure about our data layer, and we need to move to Google Tag Manager server side. I mean, send us a question, and we're happy to help.
So I think we have 2 minutes left, Jonas. Do you want to take a couple of questions? Because I see there's some questions come in. The first one is, it says, how can you make reporting easier for Performance Max?
Yeah, so reporting, actually, it's also from that slide you showed about products and price, for example. Actually, that analysis is really important in my opinion. Some needs to do it on product level, some needs to do it on brand or category, depending on how you run your assortment, but really run that analysis so you know what is actually pushed through PMax. And it might be that you can help it out to improve it. So continuously understand the assortment in detail and according to your business. That is very important.
Yes. Good, but then I think we're about to wrap up, aren't we? And thank you so much for everybody on the call. And we hope this has been educational. It's definitely been fun for us to do. And yeah, there's a lot about privacy. There's a lot about Google Analytics 4. If you can't do it in one day, don't worry, we couldn't either. But yeah, if you need more help, then please reach out. And yeah, outside of that, Jonas, let's wish everybody a great Wednesday afternoon, and then see you all on the next webinar.
See you. Thank you, guys. See you.
Bye-bye.